Okay, good morning, everyone. This is our last class for British or English literature in the 20th century. And this is the last author that we will discuss, James Joyce. James Joyce is one of the Ireland's most influential and celebrated writers. His most famous work is Ulysses, which was published in 1922 and follows the movement of Libert Bloom through a single day on June 16 to 1904. Ulysses is based on Homer's The Odysseys. Now, Ulysses is one of the great works written not only by James, it's not because it's written by James Joyce, but this work is considered as the most representative of the 20th century, Ulysses. And this is very important work. Some of Joyce's major works include the short story collection Dubliners, or Dubliners as they pronounce it, a novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, and Finnegan's Wake. Joyce was born in Dublin on the 2nd February 1882 and attended school in Glongowes Wood College uh, and Belvedere College, just up the road from the center, before going on to the University College, then located on St. Stephen's Green, where he situated modern languages. Okay. Okay, that's all you know about history. Now, if you go to this here, in August 1904, the first of Joyce's short story was published in the Irish Hampstead magazine, followed by two others. But in October, Joyce and Nora left Ireland, going first to Poland, where Joyce got a job teaching English at Berkeley School. After he left Ireland in 1904, Joyce only made 4 return visits, the last of those in 1912, after which he never returned to Ireland. 1914, proved a crucial year for Joyce. With Ezra Pound's assistance, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Joyce's first novel, began to appear in serial from Harriet Weaver's Augustine magazine in London. His collection of short stories, Dubliners, on which he had been working since, was finally published, and he wrote his only play, Exiles. It was after these successes that Joyce began to think seriously about writing the novel he had been formulating since 1907. Okay, so with the start of World War I, Joyce and Nora, along with their 2 children, Diogo and Lucia, were forced to leave Trieste and arrived in Zurich, where they lived for the duration of the war. It was during this time that Joyce worked on Ulysses and included many characteristics of those around him in the character of the book. Though Joyce wanted to settle in Trieste again after the war, the poet Ezra Pound persuaded him to come to Paris for a while, and Joyce stayed there for the next 20 years. It was Paris that Joyce met Sylvia Beach, an American expat who helped him to publish Ulysses for the first time in 1922. And from 1930, after Beach had relinquished the rights to Ulysses, Joyce became very close with Paul Leon, another expat living in Paris. Leon became Joyce's business advisor and close friend, and helped him to publish his final book, Finnegan's Wake, in 1939. In 1940, when James Joyce fled to the south of France ahead of the Nazi invasion, Leon returned to the Joyce apartment in Paris to salvage their belongings and put them into a safekeeping for the duration of the war. It's thanks to Leon's effort that many of the personal possessions and manuscripts still survive today. James Joyce died at the age of 58 on 13 January 1941 in Zurich, where he and his family had been given asylum. He's buried in Plantren Cemetery, Zurich. Okay, so this is, just a kind of an introduction about the author, and this author is an Irish, and he also one of the best examples of the 20th century English or British literature. And his major works, as we mentioned before, Ulysses, that's the first work, and then we have Dubliners, we have also Finnegan's Wake, and his play, Exiles, also is another work written by this author. Okay. Now the story Araby is one of the stories taken from his work Dubliners. Okay, and this story talks about a little, not a little, but a young boy. Okay, who falls in love with another girl. Okay, and he try his best to get the attention of that girl, but he could not. He was very afraid and indecisive. He tried to approach her, but he could not. Okay, and during and at that time, there was a bazaar. Bazaar is like, it's like a very traditional, very old market that they sell, different stuff there. It's called bazaar. And I think it's an Arabic word, by the way, bazaar. Okay. So after his attempts to get closer to this girl, he promised her that he will bring her a gift from this bazaar. Okay. But the problem is that when he went to the bazaar, it was the last day of the bazaar and it was also the last hour of the bazaar. Everything was closing and he could not get a present or a gift for his beloved. So, and that's the moment when he realized that that he could not, fulfill his promise of buying something to his girl. Now we will analyze the story in detail quickly and see what is important here. So now this is a story and it has many things, but I'll focus on some stuff here. For example, on the second paragraph here, we will try to locate some of the modernist, features in this work. The former, okay, now they describe the setting here, okay, the introduction or the setting of the story. The former tenant of our house had died in the back drawing room. Air musty from having been long enclosed hung in all rooms, and the waste room behind the kitchen was littered with all useless papers. Okay. Among these, I found a few paper-covered books, the pages of which were curled and damp. The Abbot by Walter Scott and the Devout Communicant and the Memoirs of Vidocq. I like the last best because its leaves were yellows. Okay. The wild garden behind the house contained a central apple tree and a few straggling bushes, under one of which I found the late tenant's rusty bicycle bump. Okay. He had been very charitable priest. Why? Because in his will, he had left all his money to institutions and the furniture of his house to his sister. Okay, so what is going on here? The first thing that we have to notice is that, that he's describing a house that is in the town or near this house. And he said that in this house, the tenant was a priest, but the priest died, okay? Now, this is very significant because simply the priest represents the dead people, okay? He represents the dead people. Sorry, he represents the religious people, okay? Because he represents Christianity. And the fact that the priest died means that even religion and Christianity died as well. So this is a reference to the idea that religion is no longer important in this story. And this is, by the way, a feature of the 20th century, that the people, did not, or like many people, started to disbelieve in God, and they started to, break away from the church and Christianity in general. And that's why, the description of the house is very negative here, when they say that the kitchen was littered with all useless papers. So everything is useless, dead, it's all negative images. And here also, there are some books here, and this is also a characteristic of, uh, of the 20th century literature, which is the use of, or the use of allusion, okay? The use of allusion. What does allusion mean? Allusion means that a reference to something or to author, to an event, or to a work in the work that you are reading. For example, if you reference Shakespeare in this story, that's called allusion because you refer to someone or to something or to an event that happened in the past. And then we have a description of the priest. He said that the priest, the priest is what? Is charitable priest. But the funny thing is that he gave all his money to institutions, okay? And what is left for his sister? He just gave her the furniture. And this is the irony here is that you give your money to institution, but you forget your sister and you just give her, you know, these, unimportant, stuff. Okay, and then we have, the description here. We will continue reading and try to understand the next quote here. Okay, so I want to go to the place here. Yeah, I want to read this because it's very important. When the short days of the winter came, dusk fell before we had well eaten our dinners. When we met in the streets, the houses had grown somber. The space of sky above us was the color of even changing violet. Towards it, the lamp of the street lifted their feeble lanterns. The cold air stung us, and we played till our bodies glowed. Our shouts echoed in the silent street. The career of our play brought us through the dark, muddy lanes behind the houses where we ran the gauntlet of the rough tribes from the cottage to the back door of the dark, dripping gardens where otters aroused from the ash pits, to the dark, odorous stables where coachmen smooth and comb the horse or shook music from the buckle harness. And we were turned to the street light from the kitchen windows, and he had filled the area. Okay, let's stop here. If you look here, you'll feel like there is a kind of, yes, we have children playing, but at the same time we have this kind of idea of darkness, like dark here. Look at how many dark words we have, dark. And this gives us, a very negative image of this situation, and also tells us what's going to happen. And also the violet, it's also, it's closer to the dark. Okay. And here also dark. So these words, shows how the situation is going to be, some kind of, uninteresting or something that will make us feel sad about the boy. Okay, if my uncle was, and here the boy speaking, by the way, was seen turning the corner, we had in the shadow until we had seen him safely housed. Or if Mangan's sister came out on the doorstep to call her brother into his tea, we watched her from our shadow peer up and down the street. We waited to see whether she would remain or go in, and if she remained, we left our shadow and walked up to Mangan's steps resignedly. She was waiting for us, her figure defined by the light from the half door. Her brother always teased her before he obeyed, and I stood by the railing looking at her. Her dress swung as she moved her body, and the soft robe of her hair tossed from the side to side. Now here we have the boy's description of this girl. And you see that this is a very innocent and beautiful, description of this girl who's watched by this boy. And by the way, the girl does not know that this boy is in love with her. That's very important because he's unable to tell her that he's in love, okay? And here he said, every morning I lay on the floor in the front of the parlor watching her door. Why? Because he's watching her. He loves her and he watched her, but he could not tell her. The blind was pulled down to within an inch of the sash so that I could not be seen. And there's the blind, and when she came out on the doorstep, my heart leaped. I ran to the hall, seized my books, and followed her. So I kept her brown figure always in my eye, and when we came near the point at which our ways diverged, I quickened my pace and passed her. So he simply pretend that he's walking the same way as her. But when they try to use different roads and routes, he could not tell her that he loves her. And this happens morning after morning. I had never spoken to her. See, that's why he's not very confident. He's indecisive, and that's, by the way, if you remember T.S. Eliot's poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, it's the same thing. Uh, the Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, the author or the speaker could not, express his love to women, and he's afraid of women, and he's afraid of the people around him, right? And he could not tell anyone. It's the same thing here with this boy who could not speak to this girl, except for a few casual words, and yet her name was like a summon to all my foolish blood. So these are, and he keeps, talking about uh, tried to, how he tried to talk to her, okay? But what is interesting, yeah, here in this paragraph, here he talks about also the idea of love, how love is something that is, simple and childish. One evening I went into the back drawing room in which the priest had died. It was dark, rainy evening, and there was no sound in the house. Through one of the broken panes I heard the rain impinge upon the earth, the fire incense needles of the water playing in the sodden beds, and some distant lamp or lighted window gleamed below me. I was thankful that I could see so little, and my senses seemed to desire the veil themselves, and feeling that I was about to slip from them, I pressed the palm of my hands together until they trembled, murmur, oh love, many times. So here he expresses his love to this girl, and again, it's very pure, innocent love. But we will see in the end how this love, concludes. At last, she spoke to me, and see, now this is very important. When she addressed the first words to me, I was so confused that I could not, or I did not know what to answer. She asked me, was I going to Araby? Araby is the bazaar, or the market. And I forgot whether I answered yes or no. It would be splendid bazaar. And she said she would love to go. And why can't you? I asked. While she spoke, she turned a silver bracelet around on her waist, and she could not go, she said, because there would be a retreat that week in her covenant. Her brother and two other boys were fighting for their caps, and I was alone at the railings. She held one of the spikes, bowing her head toward me. The light from the lamp opposite the door caught the white curve of her neck, lit up her hair that rested there and falling, lit up the hand upon the railing. I fell over one side of her dress and caught the white border of petticoat, just visible as she stood at ease. It's well for you, she said. If I go, I said, I'll bring you something. And here is the gift, because we said that he said that he will bring her a gift, okay? That he go, if you go to the bazaar, he will bring her a gift. Now, it's all a story until up until the end of the story here. Okay. I held Florine tightly in my hand as I strode down Buckingham Street toward the station. The side of the streets thronged with buyers and glaring with gas recalled to me the purpose of my journey. What is the purpose of his journey? It was to get a gift or something to the girl. I took my seat in the third-class carriage of the desert. After an interminable day, the train moved out of the station slowly. It crept onward among ruinous houses and over the twinkling river. At Westland Row Station, a crowd of people pressed to the carriage door, but the porters moved back, saying that it was a special train for the bazaar. I remained alone in the bar carriage. In a few minutes, the train drew up. Okay, so he's talking about that his trip to the bazaar. I could not find any sixpenny entrance, and fearing that the bazaar would be closed. So here, the moment here is very important. I passed in quickly through a turnstile, handling a shilling to a weary-looking man. I found myself in a big hall, girdled at half its height by gallery. Nearly all the stalls were closed, and the greater part of the hall was in darkness. I recognized silence like that which pervades church after service. So here, everything seems to be closed, or the stalls seems to be all closing, okay? Because the bazaar is not, it's the last day and it's the end of it. I walked into the center of the bazaar timidly. A few people were gathering about the stalls which were still open, before a curtain over which the words Café Chantant were written in colored lamp. Two men were counting money on silver, and I listened to the fall of the coins. So he came to the bazaar, everything is closed, and just some merchants are counting the money after they finished selling stuff. Remember with difficulty why I had come, I went over to one of the stalls and examined the porcelain vases and old tea sets. At the door of the stall, a young lady was talking and laughing with two young gentlemen, and I remarked their English accent and listened vaguely to their conversation. Oh, I never said such a thing. Oh, but you did. Oh, but I didn't. Didn't she say that? Yes, I had heard her. And there is a fifth. Observing me, the young lady came over and asked, what me, did I wish to buy anything? The tone of her voice was not encouraging. It seems to have spoken to me out of a sense of duty. I looked humbly at the great jars that stood like eastern guards at either side of the dark entrance to the stall of the murmured, no, thank you. And he said, no, thank you. So he's not going to buy anything because everything is disappointing. And this is a reflection of disappointment. The young lady changed the position of one of the vases and went back to the two young men. They began to talk of the same subject. Once or twice, the young lady glanced at me over the shoulder. I lingered before her stall, though I knew my stay was useless because he will not be able to buy anything. To make my interest in her wares seem the more real. Then I turned away slowly and walked down in the middle of the bazaar. I allowed the two pennies to fall against the sixpence in my pocket. I heard a voice calling from one of the end of the galleries that the light was out. The upper part of the hall was now completely dark. Gazing up in the darkness, I saw myself as a creature driven and derided by vanity, and my eyes burned with anguish and anger. So you see, that's the beautiful line that ends the story. It reflects how we as people are very romantic and very emotional, but in the reality things do not happen. Okay, in reality we see that this boy is unable to bring a something to the girl. He could not bring something to the girl, and that's why, because he's a creature driven and derided by vanity. Vanity means الغرور. And my eyes burned with anguish and anger. See, that's the ending of the story. The story ends with anguish and anger, that he's not happy in the end. That's not the love story turned out to be just a childish young person who, want to express his love and emotions to this girl. But in the end, he could not fulfill his mission and bring her something. And this is, by the way, it's this moment is called the Epiphany. Epiphany, and please double check this because it's very important. Epiphany. Epiphany is a literary technique used by James Joyce, which suggests or means a sudden revelation, sudden revelation. Sudden revelation means that that he realizes suddenly that he could not bring something to that girl, and that the market or the bazaar is closed, and that's why he was very upset and angry. I think that's all about this story. Thank you very much, guys, for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.